Yeah, hi. Good morning, hello, and welcome to Blocks and Frocks with me, Gillian Gotzel, and Lisa Gibbons from Block Leaders. And we are joined today by Bay Johnson, who is the head of curation at Orica, which is an NFT marketplace, with a difference, I should say. So, Bay, welcome to today's show, and we are very grateful to have you and have your time today.
Really glad to be here.
So, first of all, I'd like you to explain a bit about yourself, who you are. You're also an artist as well as head of curation, and why Orica is a bit different from other NFT marketplaces. And then we're going to jump into the meat of the matter. But first of all, tell me about Bay. You're an artist. What kind of artist are you?
I'm a painter, so I'm both a painter and I'm a technologist. And I'm the head of curation at Orica, so I work with all the artists that we are collaborating with to do good things with NFTs. And
Okay, and
that's
that's yeah. I mean, and you
that's
have,
already, yeah.
you have already got a couple of real world projects in real life where you're actually using the sales of the NFTs to help causes and also to promote artists who need promoting. So, do you want to talk about some of your projects?
Yeah, we launched in November last year with a project to fund a school in Uganda. So we were working with a East German artist called Meloman to fund the work that a NGO in Uganda called Banga Project was doing, and we funded the building of a new school. And then we went from that to work with an Austrian charity who was looking at retraining the survivors of human trafficking. And we worked with some amazing embroidery artists to fund more training in accessing first jobs. So one of the big problems about human trafficking is once particularly women leave that world of exploitation, they then can't enter mainstream employment. They don't have the language skills of the country they've been moved to, and they don't have the employment skills to actually enter the workforce. So we were funding a scheme there to help in that area, and that was a really successful project. And so then we were looking at putting together a Metaverse exhibition to work with Giving Block on the Housing and Poverty Fund. And then obviously all that just changed with
Okay.
the announcement yesterday.
All right. So before we get into that, I just want to go back to there are a lot of projects out there that want to do for good causes, and we know that because obviously there's people who want to, as an artist, you want to sell your art. That's really important, and it's very difficult to find a way in that crowded marketplace and to get your full return. And so it's really important to fund artists, and it's also amazing when you tag it into a good cause of some kind. My question for you, and this is one that people watching might be interested in knowing too as well, how do you make it successful? How do you get the buyers and the collectors to come along and say, do you know what, we're going to help this project? Because it's a very crowded marketplace. How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, the art comes first. And that's something we've really learned over the work that we've been doing with artists so far, is that we can support these amazing projects. But if the art isn't there, and if our collectors aren't moved by the work that the artists are doing, then it's not going to work. So we're really doing everything to support this community of artists that are already engaged in connecting with good causes, connecting with other NFT artists, to then support them in creating the work that we know that collectors want, that there's demand there for. Because we're working with some of the most exciting artists. And so the work that's coming out is extraordinary. And then we can create these collaborations with good causes that means that collectors get that as an addition. So that the artwork has to come first, and then we can say, well, all of us are gaining success from the strength of this artwork. Now let's do something extraordinary with the money that's coming in from the crypto world.
It's amazing. That's something, Lisa, you and I, we talked to so many artists. Actually, you interviewed a well-known South African artist recently, and he was talking about using NFTs to create an income. And what did he tell you the income was all about?
Well, he was amazing, Matthew Hindley. I don't know, have you heard of him, babe? But he's an artist, a fine artist, and he's renowned, and he sells in art fairs. He was in Cape Town Art Fair last week, but he said that income, not for him, but for his friends and for the community in general of artists, that income equals freedom. Mm-hmm. So it's freedom to work on the quality of the art, to work on being creative, innovating with your art, trying these new technologies, experimenting with NFTs, experimenting with AI or whatever you want to do next. But it allows you the freedom to go on that journey. That's what he was expressing. He was like, the income that comes from the secondary sales of NFTs. I think that's what we were talking about at the time. It was not just from the first initial, because I was thinking he made a good point. that an artist might put a lot of work, like so much work into their very first creation, and then someone buys that work and goes away and sells it at auction and sells it at another auction, and the artist is just left behind in that whole process. So he made some very valid points, and from the artist's point of view, I started to really understand where he was coming from, but like already, because you are an artist, which is incredible in the space.
And I think that makes a big difference. And you're the head of curation, because you're not just looking at Bored Apes, you're not looking at the latest sort of gizmo, whatever. You're in the art world.
Yeah, and that's the unusual thing. I had an amazing conversation yesterday with the editor of Right Click Save, and that we're both from art worlds and in crypto. And I have a little bit of an advantage because I came from an open source software background as well. So when open source software first was getting into mobiles, I was working a lot with technology companies at that point too. So at least I have some kind of background in technology and startups and technology marketing, because the worlds are so completely different right now. And so you have, in NFTs, what we're doing is bringing those two worlds together. And that's extraordinary and exciting in terms of the conversations that we're then having, and how technology plays into art history, how digital media is going to be changing everything in terms of what art is and how we use it, and where it is in terms of reality versus the metaverse, all these amazing conversations that are going on right now. And to be both an artist and just in that is this enormous privilege. And then on top of that, if we can, how I talk to my friends about it, because a lot of my artist friends are incredibly skeptical, they really, is that we have to be part of this conversation. Because if we're not, it's going to be like in 2018, where the platforms were created without the involvement of the traditional art world and all the art activism that's already taken place and will take place in the art world itself. Because most artists are incredibly politically engaged. We wouldn't be artists unless we had these things to express and these things to talk about, these things that we want to communicate. And most of that is drawn from our own personal and political experiences. So you bring that into the tinderbox of technology, and suddenly you have this explosion of creativity, and you have this desire to do something good with that, which is what the difference is between Web 2 and Web 3. Web 2 was all about selling and initial kind of contact of communication. And now Web 3, it's like, what can we do with this that can actually change the fabric of how we communicate, buy, and interact with each other?
I was speaking with Jordan Gray last week. He is involved with the Near Foundation. He's also an artist, and he runs a co-op, a not-for-profit called Codame. And he runs festivals every year, and with the intention of, so he's a Web3 mindset, so it's for the people, by the people. And originally it was just to help artists, sell their artwork, help them, because and not through galleries, so curation rather than galleries, so it's much more egalitarian and all the rest of it. And then they pivoted into NFTs because of COVID, and he was like just amazed, and he's teaching his artists in his co-op, if you like, that technology is just another brush.
Yeah.
It's something else you use, and you use it, and you take it, and you're an artist, but you use this technology. So that's quite powerful, I think, and maybe would help artists say that, okay, it's not me versus technology. Let's see what we can do with technology. Huge. So now, today's date is the 25th of February and 2022. So in history, if this video is still lying around the place, it's day 2 of the invasion of Ukraine. And it's very frightening. And as ordinary people, I was listening to Irish radio this morning, and we're a neutral country, but our Minister for Foreign Affairs says we're not neutral in the morals of this. And I don't wish to be political, but it is, again, it's people. People are hurting. People, ordinary folks, citizens, because it's a city. It's not out in some exercise desert, whatever. So you're going to tell us an amazing story of what happened yesterday and what is continuing to happen. But tell us in your own words where art, real world technology, and this awfulness collided.
It's really interesting because this has happened before. And I've seen it before in, do you remember the riots in London?
Yes.
There was an amazing artist called Dan Thompson who organized the post-riot cleanup in London, and he did it via Twitter. And that's happening now again in terms of the NFT community this time, mobilizing around a political event and saying, we need to help, and we need to help now. We don't have to wait for anyone to enable us to help. Because of the nature of crypto and because of the nature of NFTs, we can simply find these artists and we can support their work. So what happened yesterday? Yeah, it's extraordinary. What happened yesterday was that simultaneously, several collectors and artists started collecting lists of Ukrainian-based NFT artists. And they were just started to be tweeted out, they got shared, and artists started selling their work. And then a number of volunteers created a central database of the NFT artists themselves. I'm going to bring that up to us just so I can name.
Please do.
the artists
Because
involved.
I was looking at your list you sent me earlier. They're very beautiful. These are amazing artists. Amazing. But this is very, I feel quite emotional. This is just a groundswell. It's citizen support, it's artist support going, we don't have to wait for permission. We don't need to have governments to tell us. We can just do it. And moreover, because it's crypto, Web3, we can deliver income directly into the hands of these people. And they if you try to give money via a charity or even into a bank, that could be intercepted. This won't be intercepted. This is like so powerful.
It's very powerful.
There's too many volunteers on the spreadsheet to name them all, so I will send you the list, and then we can tweet them all out as a credit for what they're doing in terms of managing the spread. But it's literally just going through Google Docs and lists of artists right now.
Wow.
I had already collected a female artist in the Ukraine called Cher, and again my pronunciation is going to be awful. So let me bring
Shernia. I actually saw her as one of on your list. She was incredible art.
But I'm going to Chania Recta. But my sincere apologies, Chania, for my very uneducated stab at your name. But an incredible artist. She sold out of her collection yesterday because of because of people sharing the work of Ukrainian artists.
Amazing.
That is there are so many good things about that. It's to say not waiting for permission.
No.
It's recognizing need, acting as a community for the people, by the people, and ultimately it's also, as I say, putting the funds directly that they can't be touched by Russia, by Ukraine, by NATO, and by anybody. No. And that's so powerful. Those people then, if they need to escape, if they need to try and buy food, if they need to, whatever they need to do, and these are ordinary civilians, but they just have access to finance.
And who is sorry, B, I'm cutting in, but who is the other Dan? You said that it was Dan in the London riots, and now there's another Dan here, isn't there?
Well, this is Daniil. He's a community organizer, artist and community organizer that is working for an NFT project, like a lot of us artists now, because this is the first time that the roles are here for people that have both hats. He started creating a thread on his Twitter profile, compiling all these recommendations of Ukrainian artists, and very quickly got frustrated that this thread was becoming unwieldy and started organizing in a much more concerted way. So he created a Twitter group, a closed Twitter group for artists, curators, and collectors that were interested in supporting Ukraine. I was then invited by one of our Orica artists to that group. Right. Then out of that came a central Google document about ways that you can support, and all the artists are contributing work. So there's some major crypto artists already involved to contribute work to the first auction to fund Ukrainian support and civilian, all the different things that we're going to have to support in the next weeks and months to help the civilian population of Ukraine.
It's amazing how people come together and just like with a communal goal and just get it done. Just get it done, you know, get it into the hands of the right people, and no egos, you know, no branded messages, no nothing. Just we want to support these people and we're going to do it.
You're right. There's not brands
No, it's not
profiting from
brands.
this.
No.
I'm not saying that, but there's no like. It's not like McDonald's saying we're going to sponsor something here. You know, this is a ground root. And tell me, what is? How would you typify, if you were able to, Ukraine art? Is there any commonalities, or is it just as vast as the country?
It's a really interesting question, because we've been asked to put together a curated list of some of these artists, because Right Click Save wants to write an article this weekend to profile some of those artists. And for me as a collector, I've specialized in women artists. That's my passion, women photographers. And the Ukrainian women photography movement is incredibly strong. It's incredibly there's the words here. It's expressionist, and it's diffused expressionism. So very emotive, very linked to female experience, and portraying the universals of female experience in photography. And that's where I had already had this interest in the Ukrainian art movement coming out of the women photographers that were being shared on platforms like Tezos. The other artists, you've got a whole spectrum of all the movements coming out of crypto art right now, because we're so connected as artists, and particularly as NFT artists, that the art movement itself is fragmenting into all these different styles of work. You've got 3D illustration, you have tattoo-inspired 2D illustrative projects, you have the photography, you have a lot of expressionist and abstract painting. So yes, come back to me after we put these lists together, because I think there's going to be such a spotlight right now on what Ukrainian artists are creating, and just how the wider NFT community can support their work going forward, that I don't know. I think it's such an early point for all of us, but I'm just hoping that if anything comes out of this, then we can at least have this creative support network growing around what these artists are doing right now.
So do you think then also Ukraine artists who have not as yet embraced NFTs, hopefully they will, hopefully, I mean, like there's an imperative there to get on board, and it's not to jump on a bandwagon, it's just to see there's a lifeline, and hopefully other Ukraine artists will say, actually, I've been dithering and now I'm going to do it. Would, for example, with the Orica marketplace that you have, do you make it simple for artists to come on board? Would you recommend Ukraine artists approach you for help?
I think we're very open to doing what we can. OpenSea is the platform where Daniel is doing all his work.
Okay.
And that's the easiest place for artists to mint, because you can do things like lazy minting. So yes, you don't have to have ETH to start sharing your work, and your income will be in ETH. Tezos and Object are also doing some extraordinary work in making it easy for artists to start selling on those platforms. And that's where I look to for a lot of the emerging artists that I want to support as a collector. Amazing. As Orica, we're doing a lot in terms of the artists that are already established in the space, and also the artists in Ukraine who perhaps are ready to start exhibiting their work, because that's very different to being a NFT artist. Mm-hmm. So, as the Orica platform, we are moving very much into exhibitions in the Metaverse. Mm-hmm. And so our first exhibition is going to be on the 31st of March. And in light of everything that's happening right now, that's going to be a 100% charity exhibition to support in some way the Ukrainian effort. Now, in terms of the artists that we're going to be representing in that, it is really important for us to represent some of this amazing work coming out of the Ukraine. We need to work with the curators that are collaborating with us on the event to really put together a show that's both going to help the current situation in a considered and impactful way. Because I think that's the other thing to talk about with crypto, is that with donations, we can be very transparent where that's going. We can work with some very, very conscientious organizations like endowments, the Giving Block, to make sure that we're reaching the charities and the organizations that really need the support and have the greatest impact from those crypto donations as well. So it's almost like this year is when the crypto donation sphere is going to shine and grow up in terms of what it can do and how much impact it could have. Just as you've been saying that there isn't any intermediary between there, we have that complete transparency as well as to the wallet addresses that these donations are going to be sent.
I imagine too, there's going to be artists who are going to document the actual activities. It'll be live artistic documentation, whether it's photography or art or whatever, because there's so much going on. I imagine that's going to happen.
I think it's important not to put any pressure on artists to do that, because obviously while an event is taking place, and we saw that with COVID as well, that the pressure was there for artists to produce responses to COVID. And what happens is the artistic responses come after you have time to process those events.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. Which metaverse are you going to do your exhibition in?
Decentraland.
Decentraland, okay. Another question for you. If things get really bad in Ukraine and they lose their Wi-Fi and they lose their networks, what happens then? I don't know. It's because obviously without the internet.
I think that's going to be one of the major struggles. Yeah. I have...
Without electricity, you have a phone, or you think you can't plug it in, or you can't get coverage. It's quite scary.
No. Hopefully it won't get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so can I just ask as well with I'm sorry, I'm a little bit obsessed with this guy. His handle, what's Daniel's handle? His Twitter handle.
Daniel_Pan.
Daniel_Pan, just so everyone knows.
So DANIL_PAN.
Pan. Okay, so we need to follow him and give him our support as media, in a way, because we're writers, and I'm writing as a journalist for a number of months now, even in the crypto and blockchain space. But I definitely feel an obligation to shout when things go wrong, or to have, because you have a voice. Everyone has a voice on Twitter, which is great. So if everyone goes onto Twitter and follows Daniel_Pan and can, support Daniel and his efforts and just spread the word, then I think you'd feel like at least you've done something small. It might seem like a retweet, but it might reach someone that helps the situation. I feel like at the moment, looking on, I don't know about you two ladies, but I feel completely helpless over here in a little corner of Ireland, very protected, very away from what's happening on the ground in the Ukraine. And it's just scary, really scary, for them, for everyone. I don't know.
It's a good time to start collecting.
Yes.
I was going to add that.
Yeah, it's time for being a supporter of art, because the lists are already there. There's this big central database now of Ukrainian artists. That's going to be added to every day as the word gets out. If you're on, I would suggest just get a really simple wallet on OpenSea, get on Tezos, and just start literally directly buying the work from Ukrainian artists. And
I was going to say, rather than doing clicktivism, the clicktivism is one thing, but actually going, and presumably there's a range of prices too as well. So if people want to do, if there are modest prices as well for someone who mightn't have so much money themselves.
Yeah, if modest prices are important, Tezos is a really great platform for that right now.
Okay.
That's a good tip. That's a great tip.
So this database of Ukrainian artists, where can people find it?
It's a Google document, so we can tweet it out after the show.
Oh, brilliant!
Great.
Put it on the block leaders and on the Arica Twitter as well, just to get the. I think you're right, because it's not just to click; it's to buy something, and I think that's nice. And whatever your price budget is, I'm not suggesting people spend the week's wages on it, but just it all helps. It all helps. And do you know what as well? What it gives me that warm feeling. It's kind of like we're all in this together. No man left behind. All these sort of things. You think, wow, people do care, because I know that the narrative now is that Ukraine feels very alone, and I don't even the politics. And we've talked about the politics the last few days. It is quite complicated. It's possibly more complicated than it's presented. But if you're an ordinary citizen there, it's the thought. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be invaded, and to have your president saying, if you've got any experience, get the guns, come to war. If you've any battle experience, what does that mean? I've played a computer game or something like that. It is just beyond my comprehension. And so I love this project because it's connecting. It's a linkage. It's emotional, supportive, and it's also, may I say, it's the artist standing up and saying, we can do this. We've got this. And that's very powerful, because I think sometimes people think art is as being, not really having a mainstream narrative in political or social life. I mean, they can reflect stuff, but it's behind it's in a museum or it's in a gallery, whatever. And this is showing that this is real. This is art with a purpose.
And I think what's interesting about NFTs and why it's so tied into Twitter is that when you buy an NFT, you can talk directly to the artist. So you can then say, I own this. This is part of my collection. Thank you, directly to the artists themselves. So not only do you have that financial support, you literally have that connection with someone in another country, experiencing things that, as you say, we can't imagine, but we can have that direct connection and just go, I'm here. Thank you for producing this work. Just whatever we can do, let us know if there's anything practical that we can do on this side where we are right now. You're in the UK, I'm in Spain. And just having that first contact then incentivizes you to do more. Because once you realize that's an artist that I've just bought for, I'm now having a conversation with them and they're experiencing something that I'm seeing on the news. And yet I have this direct contact with this creative. I think that's enormously powerful, and it means that we can start bringing people together and start scaling around that as well.
And but you're right, before NFTs, even if you did buy a piece from an artist, from a gallery, whatever, you don't speak to the artist.
No.
It's so different.
Yeah, it's hugely different, and that's why the artist-collector relationships in NFTs are so strong, and that's why a lot of the collectors we're working with start through speculation. They're financial guys, and suddenly they're having these conversations with artists, and they become art collectors. Yes. And they change the way they see themselves. It goes from, I'm interested in flipping NFTs, buying one, selling it at a profit in a short space of time. They go from that to holding these works because they have this emotional and creative connection, both to the work itself and also the artists that they're having conversations with. It really is another art movement, because it's linking people with financial power to people with creative power, and having those two-way conversations.
Yeah, amazing. And I completely agree with you. It's a new art movement, the whole thing. It's great.
That's phenomenal. Wow, Bay, you are so articulate and brilliant. I'm blown away. I mean, when I saw your email this morning, I went, yes, I want to talk about this, but it's got so much more than I even gave it credit for. And as you say, and even going back, forget the conflict. You're connecting art with the people, with someone who buys it, who likes the painting, and that never happened before, unless maybe you knew someone. But how often does that happen? It is very rarely, very rarely.
Exactly.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time today. So we're going to tweet out from Block Leaders and from Arica and anywhere else. I've got a few other Twitter accounts too as well, a link to this Google Docs. And the call is, don't just click, go and buy. And buy according to your means, it's not whatever. And do share, please. Obviously do share. But if you have the wherewithal to actually purchase, that would be amazing.
I need to look at some art now, so I can't wait to see the Google Doc.
Wow. Thank you so much, Babe. That's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Johnson.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay.
Amazing.
Bye.
Bye.